Hi, so today we have with us Priyamvada Mehra, who's written The Cost of a Promised Afterlife, which is a memoir. So, hi Priyamvada.
Hello, hi Manjula.
So, Priyamvada, should I read maybe the flap so that, listeners, oh, the flap is quite long, so a bit from the flap so that the listeners know what your book is about. In
Sure.
India, godmen are everywhere. Their photos hang on walls, their voices fill television screens, and their are spoken in both prayers and scandals. But the word cult is rarely used. It stays unspoken until another scandal breaks out, only to be buried under silence again. This silence allows blind faith to thrive and logic to crumble. At 9, Priyamvada Mehra was led into the fold of Rampal, a self proclaimed godman who promised miracle cures and salvation in exchange for submission. What began as her parents' desperate attempt to save her mother's life soon took a sinister turn. A world where faith became a cage, obedience a virtue, and control absolute. In The Cost of a Promised Afterlife, Priyamvada Mehra exposes how cults take root in a nation of 1.4 billion and how godmen wield unchecked power. Deeply intersectional in its lens, it lays bare the psychological and physical toll of being led into blind faith as a girl and the long journey of dissenting as a woman in a man's world. This is her truth and her rebellion. Now, the toll of being led into blind faith as a girl,
Yeah.
that really struck me when at the end of your book. So you want to start, how are we going to start this? You just tell me how you came to write the book. Because
Okay.
realizing it is one thing, putting it down is also a huge thing. So let's start with that.
So it all began when I moved to Netherlands in 2022 because of my partner's job. So I was in Delhi before that, and then I saw the opportunity, and I was like, excited because I'd always been in India. I've never lived outside of India, and then so the thought that this was happening organically for me, it gave me a sort of this feeling that it could be a new start, especially for me professionally, because for all these reasons, that we'll read in the book, I was never able to sort of reach my full potential, because always everybody around me was like, oh, you are filled with potential, oh, you're so this or that. And I was like, fine, but it never translated into much for me personally. So I
Mm,
always had that thing inside me, like a, yeah, it hurt, and I was like, But then I was always in survival. So this or chance to move to the West and experience, what's going on here. I thought that as a new beginning for myself, and I was excited. And then we moved, and I was before moving, I knew that there would be challenges. There would be definitely challenges when you move to a new culture, to a new country, and also not for my job as a partner. So you have to figure everything out, from scratch. So
mm,
in a
mm,
way, I was excited and looking forward for that. But when I arrived and when I actually had to put that work and, adjust my the interesting part is that my body started giving me sensations which were new, in
mm,
terms of, like panic attacks. And these were things I didn't know. These were things I had not experienced, after this post pandemic jargon, as I call it, like, healing and panic and anxiety. You hear all of that, and especially in the West, but I had never experienced it. I mean, I had experienced a lot of issues, like in terms of, I grew up with parents with disabilities, right? And then I had a lot of, like, there's a lot of mention of diseases. I was always surrounded by it, so I had seen enough and more of that, but this was absolutely new. And then I just was consumed by it, and I failed to adjust. I failed to, work as a normal adult, as you put it. And
mm,
then I just didn't know, because I thought I was strong and I was this, and I had, seen so much. So I was like, oh, of course, this is a softer life, so what's the problem here? Why am I having so much trouble, adjusting? And, like something as basic as finding a job, and then there
mm,
were pressures because obviously there's lack of money and it's so expensive. And I come from a, so all of that just started hitting me really bad, and I couldn't figure it out. That was the worst part. And I had to seek therapy for the first time in my life, because in India also we don't have the culture of it, or you don't really, whatever goes, whatever happens in your life, you never see yourself, as like, oh, I need help. You always want to like figure it out on your own, because
Mm-hmm.
it's the culture of, our society. I mean, also maybe it's like the therapy is also like reserved to the elite section of our society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not masses don't have access to it. So I had to seek help here, and then I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and then that's when I really had to go back in time. So it was not a
Oh.
choice.
Oh.
It was not a choice. So I was forced to look back and introspect as to what is going on with me. Why am I feeling this way? I just want to be happy. I'm here. I have I'm in a loving, safe home, which is a new thing
Mm-hmm.
for me, because it only happened for me, a safe, loving home, after I left, my parental home, right? So everything was perfect. And that's when I started feeling these things. So to make sense of everything that was going on with me, I started reading. I started trying to figure out what's up. So I
Mm.
started reading memoirs, research papers, anything that would help me understand, my own experiences. And that's when I came across one of this book and all the cult related sort of material was mostly written by American authors, and,
Yes.
West, in the West. So in India, so basically I just was on internet trying to figure out, like, in India, because is there anybody who's written on similar experiences or anything like that? But I could only find some investigative work, and I reached out to those people. And but reading wise, book wise, to sort of really define those things, because I was only getting flashes from my past, and I didn't know what to do with them. And because obviously my whole family was like into it, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I picked up books and I started reading one book after the other, and that's when I first realized I came across the word cult. So I really didn't know the word cult, like, in India, you never ever, because every house has, like, that's what in the beginning intro I've written, that,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
photo hangs on every house, which is very, very true.
Yeah.
Which is very true, For some, the intensity may be less, like in the sense the control or whatever, the reason may be, but it's such a normal phenomena. So it's all clubbed under the umbrella of culture, that's all our culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I realized, I came across the word cult. Then I started reading. So the book that I was reading, I've also mentioned in the book the name and all that stuff. So that, I got the profile of a cult leader, characteristics of a cult, different categories of cults, not just religious, there are political cults, there are psychological cults, there are so many different categories to it. So because
Mm.
there is education, at least people in America, I mean, they can differentiate between, like, sort of an organized institution like a religion, or these groups which are cults. Like, there are characteristics which separate them.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that, I had no clue that my whole life was, like, systematically, like, eroded. All the opportunities, my family, everything was eroded because of our association with this particular person and his organization, and
Mm.
continue to, you know
Mm. Mm.
and so when you have that definition and all that, literature in front of you, and then it's like light bulb moments, like one after the other, and I was like, damn, that when it really shook me. And
Mm.
then parallelly, what I was doing is that, because I was really trying to make sense of myself, I was the emotional mess, and I had also done that in the past, that I would just start writing in my diary, just to, get it out of my system, because I really could not make anyone understand this situation of mine, because I had to make sense of it for myself first,
Mm.
Of course, my partners there, of course, my friend, like new friends or some old friends, they knew bits and parts, they knew I
Mm.
had difficulties all the while, but no one really knew exactly what and how, so I started writing everything down on paper, whatever was coming to me, like the old flashes, from my
Mm.
past. And
Mm.
like,
Mm.
the more I started remembering, the more they kept coming, and they didn't stop. And I was like, the things that were coming to me. So the intensity of those things really shook me, that, wow, why did I never feel that my life was so abnormal? why
Mm.
the experiences that I had never felt so abnormal. And now when I'm thinking about it, I feel like I'm this, you know, that nobody really has that experience that I had. So I started putting them down, and then before I knew it, I was looking at like a few hundred pages of what I call angry notes. Even then, the idea of book had not arrived because I
Mm.
never fathomed that there was a story, or that I had to write a book, or there's a need for me to write a book, or I want to write a book. There's nothing like
Mm.
that.
Mm.
So, and then I was speaking to a few people in India who've written on similar, topic, and then just for some sort of, brainstorming or just trying to understand myself better. And so after all that, when I had those notes and everything, during one of the conversations, that's when this idea came up that maybe there's a story here, and maybe, you know, a good way for you to talk about it, or, bring it, you know, put shine light on it would be maybe by writing a book. But and then so I was like, then I thought, I was like, whoa, that's so I started putting it all down, and then I started giving it structure, and then so it was just like, in order to make sense of my existence and my past. And then I had the manuscript in front of me, and I was like, wow. So even now, it's very surreal, to be honest, because this is a very sort of painful uh, experience. And I wish it for no one to have it, especially like as a child. Also, coming back to the line that struck with you about like being led into blind faith as a girl. I was like 9 years old, and I mean, nobody's life is perfect or anything, but my parents were doing whatever they could in their capacity to, make life sweet for us. And, there was hope.
Mm.
And I've also written this in the book that, being able to hope is also a privilege. So,
Yes.
and they were doing their best, right? So suddenly this happened, whatever happened to my mom. And then they decided, like, their vulnerability took them to such a low level of being rational that they took this path, and then they took their children, right? Because you want to protect your children as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I never really had any say in any of this. And then before I knew it, I was like this person who would, because as a child, you trust your parents, that's your only, you know, yeah, guidance, or, you follow them.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is that you're saying that you didn't find any other books, by Indians, and it's true. What struck me when I saw this book is that when I was flipping through it, and I thought, hey, I really haven't read a first-person account by somebody
Yeah,
in a godman's entourage. And not all godmen are the same, but
yeah,
some of them are clearly, they are not, they are control freaks, and we don't know about this. And like you said, and even when I saw the word cult in this, and I was thinking in on the flap when I first saw the book, I was thinking, cults are something you associate with Americans.
mm,
You think of some place in Texas where they're having some remote colony and doing weird things. This is what. But then your book made me reflect on our reality as well, and it's true, right? We have
yeah,
cults, and
yeah. We're surrounded by that.
yeah, and it's just that we don't label it as that. And when you don't label something, then you don't see it, right?
Yeah.
So I think the great thing about your book is that it makes you see that, you know,
Mm, yeah.
and that's what and the fact that you've like at the end of it, you've looked back and you've like documented it so well, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that is also something that strikes the reader. So tell
Yeah.
me, while you were documenting it,
Yeah.
couldn't have been easy, right?
Oh, no, 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 not at all.
So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I, because I did not have this pressure that I have to write a book, right? So there was no
Mm.
deadline or timeline that I had to, keep in mind, right? For me, this was purely a product of like me trying to make sense of my world. So this
Mm.
is absolutely for myself.
Mm.
When I started this journey, I had people around me. I was in a very, very privileged position at this point, right? Like, I mean, wealth and privilege is relative, but compared to what most people in India don't have, I had that when I started. Like, I mean, I was in Europe, like, I was in a safe home. I was there was, yeah, financial scarcity, but also not to a point where I could not sit at home. I had a, partner who supported me through this. It's a big, big
Mm,
privilege.
yes.
And so the process of this book was on and off. This was not written in like a continuous like flow, and I'm like, okay, done, done, done. Every day I'm sitting for 6 hours or doing this or something like that. There were moments when I was sitting the whole day and purging and figuring it out and fully invested in that. And then there were moments that I was like, I just can't deal with this. I need to just not think about this anymore, because I felt stuck. I was like, why should I go through this? So I didn't have the battery to sort of do that. So for me, this process was also like where I had to be very soft with myself, and I really had to prioritize my mental health and myself, you know. So I was mindful of that, and it was excruciating. It was so painful because it's not just like something that has happened in the past. All of it is happening in real time. Like the cult is active. The remaining of my family is fully brainwashed as we speak. So it was it was a very painful process, but I paused where I felt that I can't do this. And then I was
Mm,
like, we'll see what happens, but for now I need to stop. And then I would take a step back, and then I would do what was good for me to do in those moments, but not focus on that. And then when I felt, and then there was this urge in me that no, now get back to it, get back to it, and then I would pick it up and I would start again. So over the past 3 years or so, it's been like a journey of like, yes, whenever I felt ready, and there was this voice inside me that would not shut up, you know. So
mm,
if I had the option to just like, have a blast in Europe and like just chill, I would have gone for that. But there was this voice inside me which kept coming back to me and being like, you got to figure it out. Probably it was the trauma that my body was holding for such a long time. It's like what, 2 decades or more. It's like I'm 33. It's like two-third of my life. You know.
mm,
So
mm,
it was the trauma that was my body was holding, and then I had to really figure it out. So then I also was like up for it. Whenever I felt like, okay, that voice is, asking me to pick it up again, I would pick it up, and I had the energy to put into that. So it was
mm.
like an on and off process that of over like 3 years or so that I had to follow, and then that's how I reached the final, the manuscript, and then we reached out to the publishers. Yeah. So it
You
was
know what I?
anything.
Oh, sorry. Very good.
No, I said it was anything but easy.
Yeah. You know, what I found valuable also about the book is how you've documented the ways in which emotional manipulation or
Yeah.
intellectual manipulation by a cult leader is carried
Yeah.
out. Because, and like you on the surface, these things sound great. There's no
Mm,
caste, everybody's equal. You shouldn't indulge in whatever extravagant,
mm,
celebrations and
yeah.
you on the surface these all sound very commonsensical and very noble sort of things, but you've
Yeah.
shown how they're manipulated and how that's
Mm,
how it's contorted and
yeah.
twisted uh, uh, to sort of isolate people, and that in for somebody who hasn't experienced it, you
Yeah.
can't tell, na? You can't. I mean, people are part of some person's orbit and they're behaving strangely, but you don't
Yeah.
know why. So you have
Yeah.
put that all down, so, and you really thought it out, you know.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, this was also something that, when I got the education, when I read about it, about cults and, different categories and all that stuff. But in my case, it was a religious cult, so I'll stick to that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, these are like, because these are like groups and organizations, and they have a whole system of operation. It's not like just randomly happening on its own, and there's no like strategy to it. These are like
Hmm.
proper organizations, and there's like a money channel, incoming, outgoing. They have expenses. There's so much happening, right? It's not
Hmm.
like it's a whole business, if I may say, right?
Yes, yes.
So uh, when I was reading about it, I also like came across the character and the strategies or the characteristics of how cult operate, and which are pretty standard
Oh,
across east west. So because this book that I was reading was like more focused on like the western cults, but it also talked about eastern cults and various other kinds of cults. So the interesting bit is that their strategies are, you know, they're common, you know,
okay.
they're the same. So one
Hmm.
of the strategy, so characteristics, I may say, I mean, they're obviously, I'm not a subject matter expert, so I don't remember them like, you know, like that. But
Hmm.
from whatever I could gather, so this is part of their, you know, way to trap people, you know. First of all, they go after like the one that are the most vulnerable. Ab zaruri nahi,
Hmm.
it's not necessary that you have to, you're the poorest of the poor. You can also be someone with resources, but
Yes,
mostly people with less resources or people that are marginalized are obviously more vulnerable in comparison to people that are vulnerable but with resources. The reasons could be,
yes.
you know, if somebody is having a breakup but comes from a decent family, that person can be vulnerable, you know, in that moment.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
so they look at like when you're most vulnerable, and then when a person is most vulnerable, you're not thinking with your rational mind, you know.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly when these kind of groups like, you know, come to recruit. And that's
Yes.
exactly what happened with my parents. I mean, they were at their most vulnerable, you know, like
Hmm.
even with everything that they had in terms of the issues, like with their disabilities or this or money or caste or everything, you know, they still held to rationality and we like, you know, we want to provide our children with the best. But when they saw death, that is when everything changed for them, and then they became so vulnerable, like, but nobody is giving you answers, and so then the human automatically you tend to gravitate towards who is offering you the most certainty.
Hmm.
In fact, that's an illusion of certainty, right? Nobody
Yes.
can offer you certainty. It's the illusion of certainty that was sold to them and they bought it,
Hmm.
you know. And then when you are in it, so that's the hook, you know. And then
Okay.
this whole thing of miracle suddenly, and then they're like, oh wow, you know, hum to, you know, we got selected. And then it was a slow process of thought reform, you know. It does not happen overnight because from
Hmm.
my parents being adults, right, they're living their life, they're doing, they have autonomy, right, they are making
Yeah.
decisions for themselves and their children,
Hmm.
right? So the decisions they were making, they had as an adult, they had that autonomy, right? They were the
Yeah.
decision making
Hmm.
authorities for themselves and their children. But then when you get involved in that, associated to a cult, this play of manipulation starts to take place where there is like manipulation, there is fear, there is guilt, there are these elements. In my case, everything got attached to my mother's well-being, that if you don't follow the rules, she will lose her life. If you don't do this, she will lose her life. If you don't do this, you know, so many things, right? There's a list of 23 rules if you read the
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
right?
I read that.
So
Yeah.
then you start getting manipulated because you want you don't want her to die, right? You want her to stay
Yeah.
alive. And if somebody's offering you that hope, somebody's offering you that 100% certainty that could not offer, right? Because
Hmm.
obviously
Hmm.
practical reasons.
Yeah.
So then that's very, very tempting, that certainty, you know?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
then you start getting pulled into that. And then in the beginning, in the second chapter or so, it's like a push and pull. You're getting pulled back into your old ways and your old life where you would go watch movies or no, go watch something else. And then there is this new force which is like, oh, if you break a rule, you know, this bad thing
Yeah.
will happen to you,
Yeah.
right? If
It's
you
very
celebrate.
scary to read
Of
it,
course it is scary, right? Like, but as
Yeah.
a child, you just it's different for what was happening in my with my parents' brains, you know, but it was
Mm.
different for me because I was just following my parents blindly, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, I just want my mom.
Yeah.
So uh so it took some time, that process for to pull them in fully and to pull the family in. And then by I think it took around 3 years when my mother had like a, you know, paralysis, that attack, or you know, where we fully gave in into his control, you know,
Mm.
because
Mm.
by that time it was like, okay, doctors cannot save her. So it was like a whole process of pulling people in. And, you know, in the beginning, that was not, it was not a very strict process. It's like a more long-term process.
mm,
Slowly your brain starts to change, your thinking starts to change, you start losing an autonomy, you start giving the decision making power to that person because he's demanding it, you know.
mm, mm,
So there's just so many things that happen in your life that you give your power as an adult to that other person, you know. And it's, I see them as victims too, my parents, you know.
yeah, of course,
I
of course.
still do, but you know, but like after a while, your brain also what I read, like because from disuse, it starts to atrophy because you are
Mm,
only allowed to do certain things in life, which is like just watch his sermon or do the mantra chanting or do the prayers or do the breathing that, and you're not allowed to do anything else, right? So there's
mm,
nothing else in your brain, that's, there's no curiosity, it gets killed. There's no imagination, it gets killed. So there's so many things that gets taken away, and there's so many other elements that get shoved on you. So
mm,
and then again there's this whole us versus them mentality, that oh, we are the chosen ones, and then you know,
mm,
we are special, oh dekho, our life is good because of this guru, or you know, things like that. And then you start distancing because that's how cults operate again, you know, like when you start
yeah.
saying no to like the family for like celebrations or like festivals or like, and there's this rule where you have to take permission from him for everything, you know. So there's, it's
Mm,
like a whole trap that's laid for a person to, you know, to succumb to this system. It's like a system
mm,
of oppression, right?
mm,
And and after a while you just lose your critical thinking because you're not allowed to ask why, you know. You can't say why because that's not allowed, you know. You can't question the authority of the leader, you know, because
mm,
then you'll go to hell or whatever as per their system, that prescribed
mm.
place. So it's
But,
just,
but,
yeah,
but, one sec, how come that guy who introduced your parents to this
yeah,
cult, how come
yeah.
you mention it later, he doesn't like get immersed fully in it? He's able to,
Yeah, yeah, that also happens in these organizations. It's not like this cult that I'm talking about. They have hundreds of thousands of followers, right? And families,
yeah,
and the
yeah,
families have regulars, and we would know so many of them. So
yeah,
the intensity can always vary, you know. It's not
mm,
necessary that everybody will have the same kind of experience or the same kind of situation because, you know, everybody's life is different, you know.
that's true,
My
yeah,
in my family also, the between the four of us, the intensity of our dedication was maybe different, you know. Like my mom was just so consumed that she left, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So it just about your individual vulnerabilities also, or your individual experiences growing up as a person, you know.
yes,
Like
yes,
how me and my sibling, like we just went in whole different directions, you know.
mm,
So
mm,
that's very normal to for people to have different sort of levels of dedication in these kind of organizations like anywhere else, you know. So yeah.
mm. But I'm also wondering, the horrific aspect of it is the medical neglect, right?
Yeah.
In all these, and there's this terrible scene where you talk about that woman who's chained to the window, at the ashram, and it's like really scary. It's so
Mm,
frightening.
mm,
And also, what happened to your mother? I mean,
yeah.
like she reached such a bad space, health wise,
Yeah.
because of being part of this, right? Because of the medical neglect that it entailed. So,
Yeah.
and there must be so many people like that, right, who
Yeah.
go to this guru in search of healing and end
Yeah.
up. So let's talk about that, because that is like really, it's such abuse. No?
Yeah, I think majority of the people that you'll find going to such gurus for I mean, I don't have the stats, but I would assume that majority of them are going for, you know, uh, for something related to their health
Hmm.
in the hope of getting better, you
Hmm.
know. It
Hmm.
could be some, some scary disease, it could be something related to addiction, or the other is like, poverty. Yeah,
Hmm.
that we'll get prosperous, our lives will get better. So there were just too many cases of like people with like diseases coming to the ashram. And that's also what took us, because I think, yeah, when you don't like, uh, get answers from like certainty again, like, and you're faced by that, the kind of vulnerability that you feel, I mean, i- it's hard, and then when you're not getting answers from anywhere, you just go to anyone who's sort of trying to give you answers, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in this, and yeah, in my parents' case, that was it. And there were so many other people who would come with like, you know, uh, many different cases of health issues, you know.
Okay.
And the
Hmm.
same treatment would happen to them. I mean, they would not get like solutions to the problems. Like, I mean, obviously they would not get healed, but it was this continuous promise that if you sustain on this path, it will change. And the worst
Hmm.
was that this philosophy, or this, one couplet, he would say that even if you, even on this path, if your sufferings continue, that's a way of, that's the work of God to make you stronger, or that's like a way, that's like a test that you're put through, and you have to pass that test to sort of get the real offerings. And that's also what he said to like my parents when, she had another episode, or whatever, the continuous suffering for 3 years where she was, having these seizures, and then we just stopped after one medicine, but then she went through them for like 3 4 years because she was too yeah, weak to take a decision for herself, right? So yeah, that's very common that people seeking health benefits go to these sort of places because they just don't have a solution elsewhere, so
Hmm.
yeah.
So they don't see hope, so they kind of
Yes.
cling to this.
Yeah.
And another thing that struck me is like when one, even you alluded to it, when one thinks of Kabir,
Yeah.
you think of, I mean, you think of his dohas and you think of
Yeah.
positivity and you enjoy the music. So many musicians have, set his dohas
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
music and you draw inspiration from that. But this is a completely different, I mean, I was quite taken aback by how this cult has propagated, I don't know, some a belief system. I mean, it has kind of like contorted it. A belief system that's like, a lot of Indians
Yeah.
revere Kabir, and so this was a real surprise to me. Talk about that.
It's like similar to like how out of like these more organized religions do come like these, sub things. And even I think in the West, if I have to give an example, I mean, I won't name anything, but then so many cults are like based off of Christianity, right?
Yeah,
So
versions. Yeah.
yeah, so then you cook up your own story, you cook up your own
Mm,
like main leader, you cook up your who's the ultimate god or whoever, and then what is
mm,
your curriculum, and you will use like references from maybe the book that Christians refer to, which is the
mm.
Bible. So that's how it works, right? In our country, just say so. This is like more from like the, I would say, the organized religion of like maybe no, I won't say Hinduism because Kabir was also like
The bhakti movement,
Bhakti
right?
movement, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean you can derive it from any source and then create like distort it or like create like as per your convenience, you just change the narrative,
Mm,
you know. Start
mm,
selling it. And then there's no
mm,
question of yes or no, because when even I remember when used to be in the ashrams and then satsangs used to happen every day, like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. So this guy would like pull up like all these scriptures, like Gita and Bible and Quran and Guru Granth Sahib from all religions possible. And
mm,
he had done his own like underlining and this and that and all of that, and then he would like show that on the projector to people. A lot of them could barely like were not even like literate, you know.
mm,
So just as a proof that see, all of these books, all of these religious, all of these organized religions also claim that Kabir is God, you know. And
Ah.
you're not critically thinking, because first it's the contradiction that he's trying to show you and create a proof that, hey, what I'm saying is true. But at
Hmm.
the same time, this person has also disallowed you to ask questions.
Yes, yes.
So where does that
That's
lead
one
to?
of the rules, right? No
Yeah,
asking questions.
yeah. You just believe what that guy says. So that
God.
does not lead to anything. That's like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, see, he is Kabir is God because he said, you know.
Hmm.
What is
Hmm.
encourages? Like if I'm calling day night, that is true. If I'm calling night day, that's right. So there's no element of critical thinking, right? So these cults can be born out of any bigger religious movement, or like, and then the whole thing with cults is that they distort them, you know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
to suit their narrative.
Hmm.
Because it's very similar what he would say in this like Srishti Rachna, or like how the world came into being. There's so many theories that are there, right? Like, but we don't know
Yeah.
which one is true. You can't sit with one and be like, Acha, yahi hai. You can
Ah.
just listen to them and, be like, okay, fine, and choose or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
So this guy also had one version, you know. So
Hmm.
some things are very common across, the, religions also, in fact, because they also have their own narrative.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's how cults, create their whole curriculum and their, do's and don'ts and their rule book, as I'd like to put it.
Hmm.
And and they start selling that. And
Hmm.
yeah, so
Why do you think it's taken us? I mean, seriously, like I read your book and it struck me that there's there are so many Indian cults, and there, you've known of some people with bizarre belief systems. I mean, you think that they are little strange, but we've never labeled them. We just say, okay, they're followers of this godman who who has them in his thrall. Okay, but we've now
mm.
put this label of cult on it, which I think is really the great thing that your book has done.
Hmm.
Why
Why?
do you think? You know?
It, hmm. Well, people would be aware of, see, the thing with our country is also we are very polarized, right?
Hmm.
Either we are very rich or we are very poor.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
either we are like we have all the resources, or like, because majority, it's still a poor country, right? Majority of the
Yeah.
people are still poor, right?
Apple.
They don't have
Yeah.
to, I would not, I was actually writing down some thinking, I was just thinking and putting some things down, and this thought came to me that in our country, the marginalized people, for the marginalized people, which is the majority of the people, where is the time to sit down and think and reflect that they are at the receiving end of these systems of oppression? There is no, right?
Yes. Yes.
For a change, I got that chance to be able to reflect and, go back in time
Hmm.
and be like, damn, not
Hmm.
just one system of oppression, so many systems of oppression I was a victim of, you know.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's one thing. And the second thing is that the I would not want to comment on the people with resources or the elite, because it's not the right thing to sort of stereotype. But
Hmm.
these gurus and babas are kind of like, they're many of them are also protected by power,
Yes.
you know. So that's one way, because this whole thing of like the spirituality, the mysticism, it's all our culture, and given the political situation right now, it's leaning towards that side right now,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, the second is that why did we not think about the word cult? Is the may people maybe know about the word cult, but it's just like, how we in India we think that, I would like to draw an analogy maybe with caste, where people from one background are just suffering and the other people are like saying that, where is it? We don't see it.
Yes. It's so right. You know?
And like, I mean, I started thinking about that, and also there's a big part of it in my book, right? About like my caste positioning and coming face to face with it and confronting it and being able to proudly, not proudly, but talking about it, being able to have a
Hmm.
conversation about it. And
Yeah.
it's funny how people think that it's not there, like how conveniently we talk about race. And I'm talking about the elites of India. I'm not talking
Yes.
about the people who are facing the brunt of it, because they are busy
Yes.
hiding under shame.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
want to avoid talking about caste, right? Caste is not like a dining table conversations for Indian. Race might be one, or they can talk about gender or other things, but caste is such
Mm.
a rot in our society
Yeah.
that, and that's one reason why it's such a regressive system. We are not able to move forward. Caste is one. Hundred,
Mm.
and there's no doubt about that, right? So how
Mm.
people say that, you get blind to, I don't know, it's the naivety that makes you blind कि सब कुछ तो ठीक है, क्या है, problem क्या है, you know?
Mm.
And the
Mm.
people that you're facing the brunt of it don't have the language to articulate their experiences.
Yes.
They are just going through it. They're just surviving one day at a time, because they have to worry about food on the table. They don't have anything. That's the
Mm.
reality
Mm.
of our nation, right? So
Yeah.
I found myself in a very unique position, that not a lot of people find themselves in, and then this probably possibly the first of its kind book from India, because there are accounts written by people from the West who got influenced by gurus in India, right? There could be,
Mm.
but by a person, from India
Yes.
to write this, it's
Yes.
probably possibly first of its kind. So my positioning was so unique that I was always on the receiving end. But like my parents tried their best to, give us the best of education. They tried to sort of, do everything in their capacity to sort of give us a good life and all that stuff. But there was also this thing, especially about caste, hide it. You are never, because that's like becomes your coping mechanism, because the fear of, because in rural you can't escape, it's in your face.
Mm.
The urban world gives you that anonymity, or
Mm.
like the
Mm.
illusion of anonymity, because you can't really hide ever, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not as explicit, right? So it's always like you're hiding and you're trying to fit into the upper class narrative, by
Yeah.
like buying cars, or like wearing certain kind of brands, or like trying to improve the way you speak English, or like just doing things that shows your, that you are doing well in life, the markers of,
Mm.
as would say, you know class in the society, you know
Yeah, this reminded me particularly of Yashika Dutt's book also, which
oh
spoke
yeah,
about
right.
this idea of passing, you know,
Yeah, it's
within the
more
caste.
complex than that, because
Yeah, of
passing
course.
comes from like the,
Yeah.
the African origin, where they, because of
Yes.
the color of their skin, they would pass, right?
Yes.
Past is so complex, because this whole thing of like you have to look, you don't look a certain way to be a certain caste. You
Yeah.
could be looking
Yeah.
like anything,
Yes. Yes.
and you, because there's no one way to, okay, yeah, there's second names, there could be some markers, right? Sure.
Yeah, but it's all in our collective head, right? In our collective consciousness,
What? Of
caste.
course it is. It's
So,
not like an abstract thing. It's very
yeah,
much like
it's,
present in every
yeah,
aspect of our lives too. Like, for example, yeah,
yes,
caste endogamy is like, yeah, I mean, we are
of
so
course.
like
Yeah, completely.
we know how much of its presence is there in our lives.
Yes,
Right. But
yeah.
then, so that's the thing. I'm like, either you're willfully naive, or you're like at the receiving end of it, where you're just trying to like cover it up, right? So
Hmm.
there's not, but it's just, yeah, we are a caste society, so you can't say it's not. It's just, it is in existence, it is in our day to day and everything. And
Yeah.
if you want to talk about more explicit, it's like who owns the most generational wealth, who owns sits on most land, who leads more, who are the heads of these government institutions, educational institutions, even private sector, who's leading, who are
Hmm.
the CEOs,
Yeah.
who are the principal in schools, who are the Ayurvedic doctors. It's everywhere. You cannot unsee it once you see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of being able to see it. So that's also my intention with the book, was to come out with my experience, and we can have a dialogue. It's important we have a dialogue.
Yeah.
It's tying it back to your thing of like, cult feels like a very American thing. We are not looking at ourselves, because
Yeah.
who has the power to look and reflect? People with privilege, right? So we
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
sit and think, because it's not the labor, emotional labor cannot fall on like people who don't even have education.
Yeah. Yeah.
उनसे तो expect कैसे करें ना? People,
Hmm.
the people that are like, the Dalits of a country, the Adivasis of a country, they have nothing.
Hmm. Yeah.
They are the majority, right?
Yeah.
So, so for them, the battle is different in their life. They will be full of anger and bitterness and so many things, unfairly so.
Yeah.
But the people with resources, the upper middle class, or the, up, right, going up the hierarchy, right? We must.
Mm.
So I do that from my end, like, let's have a dialogue. It's important we have a dialogue. Like, how
Yeah.
conveniently we have so many, people here from India who are like jump on like these anti, you know, movements, like liberation movements, like Black Lives Matter, Women Lives Matter, and all that lives matter. And great, we must, right? It's solidarity. But why can't we talk about caste?
It's one of those, I mean, to use not the right word, untouchable subjects, in India.
Exactly, right? It
Yeah.
is so scary. It's like people cringe at the mention of it, and then
Yeah.
just like, I know it's not there. Okay,
Yeah. And
great.
that's also the blindness of privilege also playing into it, right? All
Yeah,
these
it's kind
things.
of, I can laugh about it. You know, I'm in a place of privilege that I can laugh about it. So, I understand that. But I have spoken about it in the book as well. So it's sort of
Yes.
ties to all sort of systems of oppression. Also talking about patriarchy, right? Like
Yes.
which woman in India has not had that experience of,
Yeah.
um, some sort of abuse or violence, domestic, sexual. It can be anything, psychological, emotional, financial.
Yes.
Most women. But you continue
Every
to.
woman, I mean, unless again they're blinded by their privilege, would
But then
accept this.
that's the thing with these systems, right? You don't realize that it's happening to you.
Yeah. You're right. You're very right.
But so that's the thing. Like, I mean, I am only able to, when I all my realizations about everything came all at once, and I was like, wow, like that's too much. Nobody should, should go through that, because again, it's like the way the society is structured, where women are told a certain way, girls are told to be a certain way. Like, it's a certain
Yes.
part of womanhood to go through pain and to go through all that they go through.
Yeah.
So that's like how you normalize it, and that's part of being a woman. Array, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how what I grew up listening to my mother. Like, she would talk to others, like, this is part of being a woman only.
This
And
is
then
how it is.
that's
you
what
know?
gets passed on to the next generation, and then you realize that how brutal it is, and how common it is, and
Yeah.
and uh, yeah, in news there are cases that come up and blow up everywhere once in 3 years about like some big, rape that happened, and then what? Nothing, right? Nothing. Day to
Mm.
day continues. The safety. I'm from Delhi. I know how what it is to live like in Delhi and grow up in Delhi. Like the
Mm.
you're carrying a pepper spray the whole time. I mean, I've taken buses in Delhi, DTC buses, and I've taken Grameen Seva in Delhi, and I've all sorts of public transport, right? So you just, because everything ultimately, like when you are at such a receiving end, puts you in a survival mode, and you're just trying to survive all of that, because your
Yeah.
body's, it's a funny thing that it's not funny. Like, when I moved to Amsterdam, like I would always keep looking back, like if I'm returning home at like midnight or something like that, it's it's safe, and it's very safe, right? And I would always keep turning back, because there was this, my body was always in this, like, guard up
Mm.
situation all
Yeah.
these years, because you're always on guard as a woman who's like trying to
Yes.
do things by herself, right? And
Yeah.
in hours when you're not supposed to be out of the house, right? Because you're supposed to be in the house before sunset, or
Yeah.
so you're always responsible for yourself, कि अगर किसी ने कुछ किया या किसी ने कुछ बदतमीजी करी, तो you are the only one responsible, and then the blame will also be on you, so just be careful about that, right?
Yeah.
Now when I was here and then I was able to think and reflect, I was like, yeah, I'm like, I am going to question that, because that is not okay, you know?
Yeah.
So all these systems of oppression, we feel ke, kahin hai. It's the same as cult, maybe as a word, maybe less known,
Mm.
or
Mm.
less
Mm.
used, because again, we are talking about patriarchy or caste. Maybe these terms are more familiar because people with resources or people with privilege have talked about it, or, done research, or, have. But with cult and all, it's majority of the people who get stuck in these are people who are like poor people. They're the
Mm.
marginalized
Mm.
people.
Yeah.
So they cannot articulate their experience and come up with the word cult and be like, "Acha, ye aisa hai." There's no
Yes.
education around it.
Uh,
So, and people who join these things, generally the perception is, Arey, who are these people? They are like some mental people, or they are like people who have like, there is a notion about like the people that join these groups, or like, go to the gurus or babas or whatever.
yeah.
So, okay, that we are not them, like they are some other, like
Different type.
deity or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not true. That's not true. It's all around us. It's just a matter of us, what are we willing to see. So once we start to have like a deeper um, look around us, or have that insight, we'll start seeing this. It's all around us. Like
Mm.
in my family is there, all my the other people are there. The rest of the family, they did not sign up for the cult, even though my parents tried hard. Good for them. So they all see, they've been seeing, right? But
yeah.
nobody knows what's happening. They've seen losing touch with my parents, right? Like drifted apart. Like my parents used to be the most social in the whole family.
Mm.
Going to every birthday, going to every party, going to every, even with their disabilities, even with whatever. They were the ones who
Mm.
were, the party runners. They used to
Yeah.
dance, they used to sing, they used to whatever, right? And
Yeah.
then the rest of the family has seen the changes happening, that, being pushed out, or like my parents incapable of having any other conversation but just cult, 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 the guru,
Yeah.
you come,
Yeah.
you come, you come, this is it, this is it. Exhausting, but it's just, it is. So nobody would step back and see, acha, this is a larger system of, farm machinery that they've become a part of. Because
Mm.
yeah, just people, like uh, yeah, they're all everybody's going through their own thing, so nobody really has time to sit and think about what's happening to others. More like, ठीक है,
Yeah.
okay, let them, which is very normal for, everywhere, but कि हाँ,
Yeah.
it's their family, they'll figure it out, whatever.
Yeah.
But now when I think about it, also as a child, there were so many things. I'm like, wow, nobody really knew what was happening in my life. Like, um, yeah, I think I got drifted away from the original question, but but your
No, no,
question,
it's okay.
your question of how people don't know about cult
yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
because education about it. People, with
Mm.
my book, I'm trying to raise that awareness around it, so people can spot it in their surroundings. People can maybe just spot se to nahi hota hai, because there is a whole system of bringing people out of that, which is like
Yeah.
reprogramming, or you need like mental health professionals, because this is a changing your brain wires.
Wiring. Yeah. Yeah.
Indoctrination, any sort, but in my case, religious, it changes your brain wiring. And there's no
Yeah.
way that I can sit and have a conversation with another person who's been brainwashed, because for them, that is just one ideology. It is fixed, it is right. That is the way of life. There is no, because again, by the cult leader, one of the rules also is that you cannot hear the criticism of the guru.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you
I
cannot hear
didn't
the
realize that when I read that in your book. Then I thought, oh my
so
goodness,
it's like blocking any way of
escape.
escape, communication, critical thinking, criticism. कुछ कोई कर नहीं सकता है, तो आप how will you pull that person out of it? Not
Yeah.
possible, no? I
Yeah.
mean, I went through a lot to be able to come out of it. Maybe I was a highly sensitive person, or I felt everything deeply, or my experiences growing up, maybe my education, or my studying literature, or like my experience as a woman, like, or like how I saw suffering, and I was like, what he's promising, but our life is so horrible, but like it's not matching. And then,
Mm.
growing up, and then, puberty. There's so many experiences that shaped me and gave me the strength to sort of start asking questions, you know. Uh,
Mm.
so through my book, I hope I want to raise awareness about what just the word cult, so people know that, array, that's a cult, like, just for in the real
Mm.
sense, so
Yeah.
they can recognize, signs, of that, and
Mm.
maybe support their, close ones or something like that. But this has to be a larger systemic change, where there are organizations supporting people who are victims of, cults, and creating proper, programs where
Hmm.
people can be led back
Deprogrammed.
to
Yeah.
deprogrammed. Yeah, people are like led back into their lives, but that's a whole that's a lot of work that needs to
That's a
be
huge
done, and
field,
that's
actually.
again like a thing that you expect the government of the country to manage, or take care of its people, but there's so much on their agendas already that they need to,
So
so
I'm wondering, now you've written this book, what about your family? What do they think of it? You know, your brother and your father, when they see it, have they seen it?
they will find out with the when the rest of the world finds out, because the our journeys have taken us on really like in different directions, and as much as I would love to have them involved or be proud of me, I don't that's a utopian thinking. That's not going to happen because they're fully consumed by this thing. And
They're
um
still consumed by it.
yeah, yeah. So very much so. So that's unfortunate and that hurts. But I did this for myself, and for my 9-year-old self, and for my 16-year-old self, and my 24-year-old self, and so many others that are there,
Hmm.
who are told that this is the way of life. And I hope that this goes into their hands, and if they can navigate, their own, like what you say, delusional ways of thinking, and take something from it, that would be great.
And is there any plan to translate it? Because I think, if it
Mm.
was translated into Hindi, it would be
Yeah.
such a big deal.
Yes, I hope that happens in the future.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because as it is, I mean, yeah, people like you and me read it in English, and
Yes.
it's a revelation for me also, and for a lot of, I'm sure it will be for a lot of other readers. But if
Sure.
it was in Hindi, then the whole mass of people could also understand what's happening, right?
Yeah, I would absolutely love for that to happen, and hopefully in the
Hmm.
pipeline.
Okay. Okay. So one last question: are you working on something else? Are you thinking of doing something else, writing something else? Because this is very good. So,
Thank you. Uh, there's not like a book that I'm actively working on right now. My time is fully consumed in the non-profit that I run.
okay.
It's called Gentle Boys Club, and it works in the area of gender, and it's focused on in India, where it's we work with younger boys,
Hmm.
and this is basically to combat gender-based violence. But we are trying to do a more preventative, this more preventative approach to it than working with victims of violence. That's the other.
Sensitizing boys to their
Well,
own behavior.
sensitizing is not really the word that I would use, but it's more like working with boys. We want to talk to them about emotional intelligence. We want to talk to them about consent education. We want to talk to them about
Mm.
healthy masculinity in a way that's not been done before. And yeah, there are a few organizations which do work with men in general, but this would also be something new and fresh. And it's not there's such a gap because there's this line that I mean, I'll share the website of my non-profit if you'd prefer later, but
Yeah, yeah.
this sits
We'll
so
say
well.
it now only so that people who listen to it also know about.
Where do I share it? On the chat?
No, you just say what the names.
Oh, it's gentleboysclub.com.
Okay, okay, great.
Pretty easy to remember.
Mm.
So, yeah, I mean, register in Amsterdam here, but the work will is happening in India. I mean, it's new, fairly new, so we are still, in the process of pilot and everything. There's such a huge gap because, there's this line which I really love, which is like a, brand line. It's like, we are blaming the man, but who's teaching the boy?
Yes, very true.
No one.
Yes.
No one, so
Yeah.
I was also, while I was working on the book, I was also like, because there were so many things that I want to work for. I was like, क्या patriarchy के बारे में काम करूँ, या cult के बारे में करूँ, या caste के बारे में करूँ, so many things. I was like, I want to talk about all of that. So I was like, But then I sat with it, that what exactly in the area of gender, because I also have a background of social work. I did my master's in social work. So I always wanted to do something in the area of social impact, but also specifically in the area of gender. But I was like, which group? Because there are already so many organizations in India which are working for, the victims. We need way more, and probably like, I hope one day we don't need anything for the victims, but that's a utopian thinking again. So I thought that, I wanted to focus on the preventative angle, and that's where I like, focused in on younger boys, like preteens, where they're really like just before the damage has been done, before they've really formed notions of what it means to be a man in their heads,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
before they've been indoctrinated, before they've hit puberty, because before that, it's all, they don't know, right? It's like what
Yeah.
we feed them, what they see, what they learn from parents, from around them, their surroundings. So yeah, this is something that is really close to my heart, and it's a long time coming, and I'm very excited about that. So the idea for it will be to eventually, it's going to start as an after school program, but eventually the hope is for it to become an in school program, for younger boys. And yeah, we are having the first pilot in Kochi somewhere in November. But yeah, I'm very excited about that. So that consumes my time a lot these days. But um, if a book happens, it happens. I don't know at the moment, but I am still absorbing this. It's very,
Yeah.
very, very surreal thing for me. It's a very intimate account. It's the story of my life.
Yeah.
I'm proud of myself, and I hope that this reaches the right hands, So,
I'm sure it will. I mean, it's really a good book. So for the listeners, go out and get The Cost of a Promised Afterlife, a memoir by Priyamvada Mehra. It is an excellent read, and what I really liked about it is that it kind of opens the reader's eyes to many things, and
Very
it kind of
intersectional.
it makes one feel a bit ignorant sometimes, but also enlightened after reading it. So thank you so much, Priyamvada, for talking to me.
Thank you, Manjula. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.